Hello there! What's going on, everyone? We're going to be talking Starhawk today. I wanted to revisit the Starhawk for Star Wars Armada, the game that initially gave us the Starhawk. And yes, it's shown up more in Star Wars Squadrons. Love Star Wars Squadrons. I stream Star Wars Squadrons sometimes, and if you want to play streaming with me, you're going to have to be in the Discord. But, super fun game. It kind of made me want to revisit the Starhawk, and so I had initially done a video where I said, look, I don't like the Starhawk in Star Wars Armada. I prefer the MC-75. It's vastly superior, primarily because it's so cheap and you can get more stuff in your build and blah, 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 all that stuff. Well, I kind of wanted to look at the Starhawk again because, hey, I finally got a recent battle report out there for Star Wars Armada. If you haven't seen that already, I'm sure I put a link to that at the end of the video. We're going to have some links over this way. But yeah, the Starhawk is... I think it's time to take another look at it. So I'm going to be using Ryan Kingston's Fleet Builder to look at the Starhawk, kind of go over some upgrades and some build ideas for it, some of the initial thoughts, and maybe where I stand today on a couple of things about the Starhawk, and maybe some build ideas. And let me know in the comments section, what ideas you agree with, what ideas you disagree with. And because I feel like maybe I don't hate it as much now. Right, and to be fair, I don't really hate the Starhawk. I never really hated it. I think that was more of a quick way to kind of get a thought across in a video headline. Maybe a little bit clickbaity. I try not to usually be clickbaity, but in that case, it was like, that kind of gets the idea across because everybody thinks it's the greatest ship ever, and I'm not sold on it. So let's say I hate it, and just to draw people in, and then we can actually have a discussion. And so I made some points. But I want to revisit the whole ship, and because I've had some fun with it, and it's in the during 2020. Granted, I haven't been able to play Armada a whole lot, but there's two versions of the Starhawk. We've got the Mark 1 and the Mark 2. The big differences between those is the Mark II has the red dye for anti-squadron fighting, which means it opens up a whole lot of opportunities with this ship. This is This is the version of the ship I like the most overall because of what's printed on the card. However, the Starhawk Mark 1 is cheaper and has access to more titles, so it's the ship that you can actually do more with. And so it's really a very interesting, a lot of ships that come out don't have much difference between the two variants. And this one, I feel like has a lot more difference between the two variants. Not a night and day. Like, there are some that have more, but it's got a healthy amount of difference between the two variants, and I kind of like what they've done between these two. I mean, for 10 points is not a small amount of difference between two variants of a ship, and especially you're gonna be hurting for points with all the upgrades you can put on this ship. So, first off, it's a rebel ship that can take 2 officers, and I would say it's the first rebel ship that can take 2 officers, but it's technically not. But it's the first one that you can easily take 2 officers. Like the Phoenix Home, unless you take a second officer, but that's a unique title, and you can only do that on one time. So this is really your opportunity to be able to have a ship that's easily able to just put 2 officers on. And since this is such a bigger ship, it can do so many more things. It opens up a whole lot of different officers that might be large ship only. For a long time, people wanted to put strategic advisor on all of their ships, but then they didn't have an opportunity for any of the other officers, and so now this became a ship. Hey, I can put strategic advisor and still something else. However, in light of my recent interview with Michael Gurnis from Fantasy Flight Games, we did learn that Strategic Advisor is kind of going away, at least for now, as well as other cards like Bail Organa. So that certainly changes some of the approach when we're looking at the Starhawk now. And so I'm going to talk about all of the different upgrade slots. But I want to start with Commander first, because there's a lot of new things we've learned about Armada recently, with Armada 1.5 coming out, the upgrade card collection, some of the different rules, the Clone Wars coming out, all new factions, the pass mechanic and the pass tokens we're going to get in the dial upgrade expansion. All of these things kind of have a lot to do with maybe a different way of looking at the Starhawk. So that's really the focus of today's video. So let's go ahead and, but before I jump too far into this, I also, just a side note, if you are interested, there is a petition going on right now to have Armada translated for some non-English speaking folks. This is actually for French and Spanish translation. I guess the work has stalled on French and French and Spanish translation for Star Wars Armada, and there's actually an active petition going on right now to try to get the game translated into those languages. So if that is something that you are interested in, I'm going to put a link down in the video description below, and you can check that out and share that with your friends who might also be interested. I know those guys have been trying to get me to mention this petition for the longest time, and I apologize for not mentioning it sooner, but I did remember you and I wanted to give you a shout out. Okay, so the Starhawk is, I think there's only a couple of commanders that you can really think about running with a Starhawk fleet. The Starhawk's going to take up most of your list, and while you technically can put 2 Starhawks in a list, most people aren't going to do that for a number of reasons. For one, well, they're practically sold out everywhere right now. For two, it's a monetarily very expensive ship, so it's like an $80 ship, so you can't really afford, not that many people can afford 2 of them. And for 3, it uses up a ton of points, right? And it's kind of like a ship you build your list around. Now, I'm a glutton for punishment, so of course I bought 2 of them, and we'll at some point probably run a double Starhawk list again someday. But I think really getting the breath of life out of this game is having a diversified fleet, and you can do a little bit of that with a single Starhawk builds. And so any commander you're going to run you're not going to have a whole lot of ships, right? You're probably going to have your Starhawk and then maybe like 1 or 2 other ships, and then probably some Squadrons. And so who's really going to work well with that? I don't see Mon Mothma working particularly well. Maydeen is a possibility, I suppose. I mean, you don't have dead spots where you really need the extra yaw, and you're already kind of slow. So, I don't know if, I'm not sure how much nav is really going to be used with Maydeen. I could see some potential. I could see some builds with him. Riken, I don't know if that's going to be, Riken would only be really useful if it was, depending on the rest of your build, if you wanted to run Garel's Honor and things like that, maybe. I feel like you're going to get less mileage out of Riken when you have less ships and less opportunities to use him, although he could potentially see some use moving forward with the new rules because of the squadron changes, like a limit of 4 unique squadrons. Maybe you want to preserve those unique squadrons a little bit longer. That could be an option. Kraken, it doesn't really fit into a Starhawk build because he can't work for the Starhawk. Garm could certainly give you a little bit of love. I'm not a Garm fan, and I don't know if I ever will be, so I'm going to just glaze right over Garm. Sato has a little bit of work with the Starhawk, but since we are not getting we're not getting that ordnance option on either version of these ships. We're not really able to do black dice effects at long range, so that's not like my first choice. Radis, had been errated, so you can't really use Command Force ships to warp them in with Radis. However, you could warp another ship in, but then you really do start to run out of points very, 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 very quickly. So if you're going to run Radis, you're not going to have a whole lot of points left over for Squadrons if you're going to warp in a big enough ship, and it kind of ends up not being worth it at that point. Radis is a lot better to warp in a large Command 3 ship or lower, very similar to like the Profundity or something like that. That's where he works best. And Akbar is all right, but this is a ship that doesn't really need Akbar. It's got good double arcs. It's got a good front arc and side arcs. Akbar's fine, but it doesn't shine with this ship. So, which leaves us a couple of commanders that I left out. Dodonna, who's always great in every circumstance. He's cheap, and crits are just universally good. Dodonna is works in 100% of lists, and I will always love Dodonna. But the one that comes with a Starhawk is Kirsten Gate. She is, for a long time I was to say she should be stapled to the Starhawk. A lot of people have said that initially, and I understand why, because this ship, while it is monstrous and is very, very, very tough, right? Like, it's got 14 hull, 6 shields in the front, 4 on the sides, only 2 in the rear, but lots and lots of shields, incredible amount of hull. It's just an atrociously huge ship, and technically large, because huge as a class. But yeah, it's a hard ship to kill, but it does not have defensive retrofit. So Kirsten Gate was often seen as since it doesn't have a defensive retrofit, you kind of need her. Plus, you get an extra defense token and all that stuff. She makes for without Kirsten Gate, this is a ship that's killable, not easily, but it is killable, especially if that one accuracy comes through, right? They can stop the brace and, take a chunk out of it, and maybe after 3 rounds it goes down, right? So Kirsten Gate's meant to say, it's not going down after 3 rounds. It's going to take you all game to bring this ship down, right? Well, the problem there is I think a lot of people simply decided, okay, that's cool, I'll just kill everything else and ignore the Starhawk, right? And so I think in light of that being something that people have done, I feel like maybe we want to consider someone like Leia. And the reason being is Leia's getting a points adjustment in the card collection pack that we learned about. Leia's going to be much cheaper. She's going to be, I think, 28 points if memory serves. This is kind of off the top of my head, but yeah, like a 10-point cost reduction for Leia to work now. And all of a sudden now, she's still obviously she's still more expensive than a Gate, but she now does something for the rest of our fleet as well. I'm a big fan of doing things like concentrate fire. If you have ships that you want to be very mobile and you want to be able to double nav, she can do that for everybody. She can do a lot for your whole fleet, in those supporting ships. Or if you're running, maybe you're thinking about running double Starhawk, right? If you had a Gate and you had double Starhawk, or maybe just Starhawk plus another large ship, people are going to go for the weaker ship. Well, now if you have Leia on one, all of a sudden, if both ships can run engineering and get that token each turn, it starts to really kind of come back from all the damage you try to throw on them, and she's going to work for both. So I could see maybe Leia as being an option on the Starhawk. So I kind of like the idea of Leia going on a Starhawk. And the other thing is, now, since I don't have a Gate there, maybe I'm going to tempt you into actually engaging the Starhawk, because I will say this, if you followed my last battle report, I didn't really get to engage very much with the Starhawk, and that's, because of its low mobility, you kind of have to tempt the opponent to kind of get in range of you. They need to, get close enough to you. So, and if you've got an unkillable ship, what incentive is there for them to even try to engage with you? They're like, no, I don't want to even do that, and so now if your ship suddenly appears killable, well, maybe now they're willing to engage you, right? So it's like part of this is the mind game approach, which I think is valid. I mean, I play the game for fun. I don't necessarily play it to win all the tournaments I go to. I have won a few, and that's great. But like the mind games is definitely a valid aspect. So I think Leia represents the ship as more of a juicier target for your opponent. So hey, it can die, and it's buffing everybody else, so now you have more incentive, versus like this iron shield where it can't can't possibly die. And to go along with that, officers, right? Waylix Ballistics is somebody that often was stapled to a Gate Starhawk, because he's going to let you get one of those defense tokens back, which is, granted, that's awesome. Waylix Ballistics is a good officer, and especially a good on the Starhawk with a double officer slot, and often taken with a commander that synergizes with him directly. That's very, very cool. But now with Leia, maybe we don't run Waylix Ballistics, or maybe if you just don't, also Waylix Ballistics does nothing if your opponent doesn't engage you. Like if they don't shoot you and you don't spend any defense tokens, Waylix Ballistics is a waste, right? So, so there's a lot of, other options that you can spend, especially since you're going to have 2 officers. I toyed around with Major Durlin on one. I'm like, I'm hoping you do attack me, and I'm hoping, Major Durlin is going to be 1 more damage reduction each turn. So, if you are looking to maybe say, don't attack me, he's 1 more level of armor on a heavily armored ship already. Also is Lando. Lando is like unnecessarily strong. Like he's so good for this ship. Honestly, usually Lando's kind of better on a smaller, more fragile ship. But if you're not running a Gate and they happen to get that 1 accuracy and then all those black dice or whatever, maybe you put Lando in there. He's certainly he's good on any ship for sure. Any ship that you want to save their life. But there's so many really cool options, right? Sabine Wren is super fun. Torian Farr is a good support. If you want this ship to seem like a threat, like, hey, it's supporting all these other small, like I got a couple of CR90s or something like that flying around it, Torian Farr, making it a support ship, making it a more attractive target for your opponent so that they do attack it, can be really, really fun. But one of my favorite officers to put on here is Ezra Bridger. And he came in handy in my last battle report. Ezra takes, I feel like he kind of helps mitigate the biggest weakness of the Starhawk, and that it's really, really slow. And sometimes you may, to try to force an engagement, you may have to fly like through an asteroid field or something like that. Plus, being able to move obstacles is universally good with all of the different objectives that have come out, especially a lot of the newer ones. In my last battle report, we had a gravity rift, and it was like, oh, it's right in front of me. I'll never be able to get away from it because I'm too slow. No problem. Let's throw the gravity rift at my opponent and move the objects out of the way, so my slow speed isn't such a big deal. Right, so like Ezra's really, really fun for that. Now he's a one-shot once per game, but I love the fact that he lets you kind of reposition the game board a little bit. So I really, really enjoy Ezra, and I think he's worth considering. Also, if you're not running Kirsten Gate as as a commander, you might want to consider Kirsten Gate as an officer, because she's actually a solid officer that often never gets taken on a ship like this because she's usually the commander. But she is going to give you a new crit that you can resolve during the Salvo attack. That's going to let you ready one of your exhausted defense tokens. Like, oh, by the way, maybe a Salvo. Or, oh, did my single brace get used once already? If they do come at you hard, you know what? She's good for that. There's a lot more options, but I feel like kind of changing things up a little bit with some of the things that we've seen, like strategic advisor really not being much of an option anymore, opens the door for a lot of other effects. I mean, heck, we've got maybe damage control officer is always a good option. Look, we only have the one contain, but that really kind of makes them like, well, which accuracy do you want to spend? So there's quite a few options for officer. For heavy weapons team, a lot of times for your weapons team, it's all about the gunnery team. And what I like about the Starhawk is it's one of those ships that doesn't need to fit into the mold of, I guess I have to take a gunnery team, because it really doesn't have a weak spot or a weak side, right? The rear is a little weak, but it's still strong enough. But like both the sides and the front are great. I mean, certainly gunnery team is not a bad option for this ship, because its front arc is definitely the stronger arc. But realistically, even if I only get you in the side, that's a great attack. And we'll probably have some other stuff on this ship that are going to enhance this, the shots coming out of it, between the ion cannon and the turbo laser upgrade slots. It doesn't need to have gunnery team. While that's good, it's not absolutely necessary. Local fire control can definitely work on this, especially as it applies to some of the titles. And I'm going to jump right into the titles after this. I'm going to skip around a little bit. But Caitkin and Sholin is actually a really good option for a Starhawk. You have so many dice colors. And especially more in the Mark 1 than in the Mark 2, because you got those black dice even on the sides and a second black die on the front. You're more likely to have, like, oh, I really needed the black dice right here. Or, oh, this is a long range shot. I really needed it for the red dice or whatever. But Caitkin and Sholin can be great. So I like that. I don't really see Ordnance Expert being that big of a deal, although it's a maybe. It's a maybe because you do also have black die in your anti-squadron battery, and you've got it on the sides and on the front. So like that's you really have some good choices. But I also like Ruthless Strategists on the Mark II, because the Mark II has that red defense die, and I mean, granted, I know it's overkill, right? But when it works, it's super fun. And what I mean by that is taking Ruthless Strategist on something like the Mark II, and now I've got red dice at long range. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, and I can attack at long range, but also I can do an extra damage to you at long range. Even if you evade, or even if you scatter, I can still do that damage. So I love that combination of being able to do it. Of course, you do have to have squadrons out there engaged with them to take the damage. But Ruthless Strategist is really fun when it works, and when it works well, it works really well, especially with red dice. So that's like a really fun way to do something like that. And you know what? You could even put like Heavy Fire Zone on there too, and roll 2 red dice. If you wanted to go, you could build a Starhawk to be a total anti-squadron machine. Now, I feel like there's other ships that can do that almost as good for a tiny fraction of the points, so maybe it's not the best option for something like this. Like a Nebulon can do double red anti-squadron also. So you probably don't really need this particular setup to do it, but it's cool because it does so many other things also. It can still, even without any upgrades, it can still be very tanky, and it can still hit really, really hard. So you don't need all those extra upgrades, but it's fun to use them for sure. I said I was going to jump to titles. Let's jump straight into titles too. because we've got the Amity, the Concorde, and the Unity. The Amity and the Concorde are each Mark 1 only. They cannot go on the Mark II. Like I said, and I remember early on I said the Mark II was my favorite version because of the Red Squadron, the better attack. However, the Mark 1, we got to go with that. It's still good. Like a black and a blue is still good anti-squadron, but we have to go with this version if we want to run the Amity or Concorde. And those are good titles, definitely. But the Unity is the only one that can go on the Mark II. So let's look at the Unity first, because this one can actually go on any of them. And I realized I just put it on the Mark I, but I just clicked on it so we can look at it. Right? Now all of these titles give you a defense token, which is cool. This one's 10 points, so it's pricey for sure on a ship that's already 150 points. Because if you're putting this on the Mark II, it's already 150 points, so this makes 160 right off the gate, right out the gate. But this does a lot of cool things and kind of factors into the whole Ruthless Strategist Heavy Fire Zone option. And that's after you deploy, you're going to gain a redirect, which is good. Now you have 2 redirects. Awesome. Very awesome. While attacking a squadron, if the defender's engaged with a friendly squadron without the printed heavy keyword, you may re-roll a die. This gives you a re-roll on your squadron attacks. So here, let me put this over on this guy, because this is fun. This is just a fun way to run a ship like this one down here. The Starhawk with Ruthless Strategist, Heavy Fire Zone, and Unity, you're getting to roll 2 red dice. You're getting a re-roll every time. Oh, by the way, like... we can. You know how much damage you can. You can do 5 damage here. You can get those two double reds and an extra one from Ruthless Strategist, and you're getting a reroll for every squadron. It's really nice. I'm a big fan of this. It's a fun thing to do. But Unity is also really good because you're getting a really good defense token. This ship has a lot of shields. It definitely can take advantage of that redirect. But the other two give different defense tokens. Concorde gives you an extra salvo, which is super cool. Salvo is also amazing. And this is, this ship has it natively. I didn't even talk about that yet. But salvo is a fantastic defense token. And so many people, that haven't been playing much in 2020, I know a lot of people who are playing online are probably used to it by now, but like for my first couple of games after Wave 8 came out, Salvo was just like, people were forgetting, people were just attacking, like, I guess I'll just attack, I'm not going to kill you, but I'll attack anyway. I'm like, okay, good. Well, I will Salvo, attack back. Oh, and I just killed you, so thank you for a wasted attack that allowed me to finish you off. And they're like, oh no, so, I mean, that's only going to last so long. People are going to get used to it eventually, but Salvo really makes you think, is it worth attacking? And so I love that mechanic, and we're going to see more of that moving into the Clone Wars, and I'm sure we're going to see more upgrades in after the Clone Wars comes out that make us even revisit the Starhawk again for its tremendous salvo potential. This one can get 2 salvo tokens if it takes Concorde, potentially a 3rd salvo token if you put a gate on it. And granted, I don't see a whole lot of reason to do that because they may just not attack you at all, and that's one of those problems. Maybe you go for just a 1-ship build and like, you have to attack me, otherwise I will win. And you could certainly force somebody into a situation like that. But a lot of times they'll try and just kill a squadron or something else and leave. But the Concorde is a cool title for that. And it's also the most expensive at 12. Concorde allows you to spend a defense token if your speed is 0. Now, that's a big game-breaking rule, but because this is a ship that wants to be speed 0 if it's using the super weapon, the Magnite Crystal Tractor Beam Array, you have this combination of wanting to be able to go first. You want to be first player who kind of uses this ship late in a round on your opponent's flagship. You reduce to speed 0, tap the Magnite Crystal Tractor Beam, reduce your opponent's ship to speed 0, and then go after they've already gone and are kind of stuck at speed 0, and then you kind of go first next turn, finish them off at speed 0. It's kind of cheesy, but you certainly have to broadcast that you're going to be doing that in advance, and it'll be interesting to see how difficult or easy that is to do in a post-Armada 1.5 world where we have more pass tokens being used, and how hard or difficult can it be to do something like that. This is going to be something worth revisiting because There's other ways to use the Magnite Crystal Tractor Beam Array, and it doesn't involve you. You don't have to be at speed 0. It's nice if you're just simply at speed 1 and somebody is trying to get out of your front arc maybe, and they're trying to zip past you. You can just slow them down. Take you from 4 all the way down to 1. Slow down, and now let me kill you, right? Even if they do a nav again, they're probably only going up to speed 2 next turn. So you can really slow people down and mess with people's objectives. Or if somebody is trying to slow roll, you can speed up, go to 2, and then pull them along, and now all of a sudden they're moved up to speed 2 against their will. So the tractor beam is kind of cool, but it works very well with the Concorde. I don't feel like the tractor beam is a must include, especially at 10 points and the Concorde being 12. You don't always run those two, right? That's maybe my least favorite title because it's so expensive, and while it's cool to get the extra salvo, I don't necessarily subscribe to this whole I've got to do this cheeky kind of mechanic to make you speed 0 for 1 attack. I mean, we already have stuff like that with Avenger, which it's not fun. It's not fun being caught up in it. It's like I don't know. We'll see. Maybe that'll even get changed someday. Who knows? The Amity is a title I like a lot more. For one, it's super cheap. And I like that. I like it, for 6 points, at least compared to the other titles, it's way cheaper. The Amity is going to give you an evade, which, hey, you know what? You really don't need that very often. Maybe you'll get some use out of it when you're, doing your initial approach. Okay, evade is maybe the least good out of all the defense tokens that this ship can equip. But it also gives you, when an enemy ship overlaps you, so it's got a long range help and close range help. So it makes itself a little bit diversified. If and hey, if you just wanted the extra defense token, maybe now is when you put local fire control on there. All right. And we say, hey, now I've got, because it's after you deploy and then after you deploy. So you do this part first because they happen at the same time. You choose the order. Get yourself an evade, then cash in the evade for an extra salvo. So now all of a sudden you can have an extra salvo. Now that ends up being at 10 points. That's still cheaper than the 12 points to get the other salvo, but you also get that additional effect of the extra damage when somebody overlaps you. And so that much is kind of cool. I like, and the Amity's more about that secondary effect, but having extra defense tokens is certainly a good thing. And to be fair, local fire control isn't really for the Starhawk. It's just an option that you can do if you wanted to do that. Local fire control really exists to give salvos to everybody else. So it's not the way I would really prefer to run it. I think the Starhawk run is actually fine without any tokens at all. But out of all of the titles, tokens. Out of all the titles, I think I kind of like Unity the best. It gives you the most useful defense token, in my opinion, and I really like its ability of on the Mark II to be able to have those red dice and have free rerolls kind of built into as long as you're running enough squadrons to make sure they're engaged. So that's kind of a look at the titles. Again, you don't have to run any of the titles. Now, as far as offensive retrofit, I don't always run this one on the Starhawk. It could certainly work for Flag Bridge. You could certainly put hardened bulkheads on here, especially if you're going with the Amity. I kind of like that idea of hey, well, this ship is definitely going to be ramming, but you're slow enough that you might not really be able to make that work. But or if you wanted to, again, you're probably running some squadrons. Maybe you want to run some squadron boosts. You've only got a squadron value of 3 on here, so it's not necessarily the best carrier, but you can increase that value. Boosted comms is one of my favorites. When in doubt, boosted comms is usually pretty good. Or you can get counter 1, which is a cool option too. I think Flag Bridge being the newest one and also being free is a pretty cool option to do. Or maybe advanced transponder nets if you happen to be running a bunch of bombers. But this is one that I'll sometimes leave blank. I think into offense, we're getting into the really good stuff right here. This is one of the few ships that I've really thought about running high capacity ion turbines on, just to make that whole entire front circle beautiful. An extra die on both sides is really, really cool. So I like the idea of that. It being a modification makes it a little harder to take sometimes. And look, heavy ion emplacements is a really good card. It's hard to not use heavy ion emplacements. It's also really hard to not use leading shots. Leading shots is just so good. Almost everybody runs leading shots because for only 1 die I can reroll everything or whatever I want. That's awesome. And with as many dice as this ship tends to have, leading shots is probably the best option, especially for only 4 points. But I also really, really like linked turbo laser towers on a ship like this. Linked turbo laser towers is probably one of my favorite upgrades of all time because it does so many different things. It's giving you a reroll on every attack you make because every attack has red dice in it. Well, if it's on the Mark II. If it's on the Mark I, your squadron attack may not, but of course you can always add one if you're attacking just one squadron. So you're getting a reroll on every attack already, which is cool. Plus, if you're attacking squadrons, you get to add 2 dice of any color to that first one. And one of those can be a red, and then you can reroll that one. You know, and if you're not using that whole like focus fire on a single squadron, if you've got red in that attack pool, you get to reroll that on all of those as well. It's lots and lots of rerolls without having to spend a die, and on your long range shots, which the ship may have quite a few of, being that it's so slow, linked turbo laser turrets is actually better than leading shots because you're probably not going to have a blue die to spend to get all your rerolls in. So I like linked turbo laser towers. I've never regretted taking linked turbo laser towers on any ship that would work with it. So that's probably my favorite one to put on any version of this ship. I mean, while I do like heavy fire zone on a Mark II, I probably wouldn't always take that. In a lot of cases, I would probably rather run linked turbo laser turrets down here, even on the Mark II, because again, I've already got 1 red die. It's just going to let me re-roll that. And with Unity, I can actually re-roll it twice. So you can really fish for the double, which is super fun. All right. So this is another look at the Starhawk and some different ways to potentially run it. I'd love to hear from you guys what you guys think. These aren't full-blown fleet builds because you can look at my most recent battle report if you want to see like the fleet that I ran there, and I think I had packed a lot of punch for a 3-ship build in a list like that. You can do an awful lot with 1 Starhawk, but 2 Starhawk builds are also pretty fun. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments section. All right, guys, that's all I've got for you today. I hope you liked this video. If you did, let me know what you think. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to click that bell for alerts. If you liked the video, don't forget to click the thumbs up. And if that's about it, I've got to leave you guys with my most important words of wisdom, that daylight savings time is awful. It's worse than a bag of farts, and it needs to change. Thank you so much for watching. I want to thank my patrons as well. You guys are absolutely amazing, and I could not do this without you, so thank you for your continued support. I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much, and as always, have a great day.